Hi, I'm Eddie Salter, pro staff for Flexstone Game Calls. Hey, I was lucky enough to win the world champion in 1985 for as turkey calling, and also come back and won it again in '89. And I consider myself real lucky, an old country boy from Evergreen, Alabama, to be able to turn something that I love, and that was actually turkey hunting, into a profession. Now I'm selling turkey calls. And you know, today I want to talk about some of the places that you find turkeys that most hunters overlook, some of the places that you don't think a turkey would be at. And one of them, you know, for years and years, you know, I've kind of seen it unfold under my eyes growing up in southern part of Alabama. The timber cutting started real heavy about 40 years ago, and they were just wiping out our big pretty hardwoods. And for several years, you know, I was a barber, in which I made that to be my benefit too, because it helped me gain access to a lot of places. But for several years, I overlooked some of these areas that was growing up in these young pine trees. And after a few years after they open up, and it makes some great turkey habitat that I was overlooking. And if it wasn't for my customers coming in telling me, you know, because they were whacking 10,000 acres, and they were coming in and said, man, we seeing turkeys all over these young pine trees. And for so many years, I was driving by them, and then I got in there and got to hunting turkeys, and boy, they were gobbling. And I found out a lot of times, even in these young pines, they still run these roads, and these turkeys, it makes for some great setups for turkeys, because they're going to be coming up and down these roads. And man, I tell you what, I kind of kept it quiet for years right there. I didn't want to tell nobody about hunting these turkeys in these planted pines. And also, some of the little isolated turkeys really around some of these city limits and some of these bigger towns, which will allow you to hunt in, you know, get overlooked because they're in town. So don't overlook some of these places, like if you're in the city limits, or some of these little pockets that, especially if it's pretty hardwoods in there, and if it's got a little creek drain in there. So many times, I think for deer and turkey, we overlook some of these little places, and a lot of people think that turkeys, you know, because it's thick in some of these areas or whatever, that they can't survive. But that's very wrong, especially if there's little roads cut through them. And turkeys have to learn to adapt, just like we have to learn to adapt. A lot of times, you know, we don't like it to see a bunch of these shopping centers come in, the areas around and about. We have to adapt to it. And the turkeys, hey, that's their living room. They have to learn to adapt. And so you need to look at these little hard to get to places and that you think that a lot of other hunters may not be in.